One of the arguments I've heard,
Uh-huh.
and I'm interested in your insight into this, is that we have a prison culture. We build prisons because we have people who socially are ill-adjusted. They perhaps had a bad experience in childhood. They didn't succeed in school. They were desperate. They had no other way to deal with life. There's an argument that we spend a lot of money building prisons. We spend a lot of money paying for inmates and incarceration, rehabilitation. Had that money been applied to those same people when they were young, in early childhood intervention, we could save a lot of money, and the results might have been different. That we would have had people that would have been better adjusted, that they wouldn't have turned to crime, that they would have other alternatives if we had spent the money in the early childhood years teaching children how to adapt socially.
Well, I think that's one of the things that Weikart found. The kids who had the experience were less likely to be involved in the judicial system than kids that didn't. I think what we're coming to realize is that early education is just one small piece of the puzzle, however. That the problems associated with large cities like Milwaukee or rural areas of poverty. And we have it right here around west central Wisconsin. That it's not just early education that becomes part of that. You've got generations of young people today who haven't had the benefit of growing up in positive experiences with families. Then we have the notion of young people moving away from home and not having the support of a mother who was successful, who will be the grandmother for his or her children and things like that. And the opportunities for employment and all these things have become very, very complex. Early education would contribute to improving that. But I think one of the things that we need to consider is perhaps developing a culture that really focuses on supporting successful families, successful parenting. And that may mean that we need to do more with curriculum that exposes younger children to mentors that are more, that have characteristics associated with being a strong mother, a strong father, effective father, etc. And actually building these things into our curriculums so that we can provide experiences for young children related to families that they don't get at home now.
Isn't that what a teacher does all the time?
Well, they do, but there's more to what we talk about with families than there is what teachers do. We have wonderful teachers, highly effective teachers, but there's more to parenting than teaching. There's subtleties of relationships between that last 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and seeing people under different kinds of stressful situations and participating in washing clothes and going to the store and cooking meals and eating together and things like very powerful things that we can approximate in a classroom, but that we can't really provide, especially when the children leave and go home and don't have that. Now there are wonderful families, but there are many that need support to have these kinds of things happen. So when you come back to the judicial system, I think there's evidence to support that in fact it would make a difference for some if in fact they had earlier and better experiences. But that's in the home, in the community, and in school. It's not just in school. School would be just a part of that. Wisconsin's an interesting environment because we're a state that looks very much like Minnesota. But we have far more incarcerated individuals in the state of Wisconsin than they have in the state of Minnesota. And one of the questions they ask is why? Why would that be? What are they doing in Minnesota that's different than what we're doing in Wisconsin?
You have an idea?
I don't. We do know that the cost of incarceration is immense. Now, it may be as much as $30,000 a month to keep someone up here at wherever it is on Highway 29 or at Waupun, places like that. What would happen if we had invested in rehabilitation programs or quality education and early education? Quite frankly, I think we have to. I believe that we live in a world that's so different today, not just within Wisconsin or within our nation, but within the world, that we have to take an approach to education of children, preschool through technical colleges and ongoing and things like that. That would be the same effort we would take if, in fact, we were going to, the same effort we took to deal with World War II. A massive national effort. Build support for education, respect for teachers, pay teachers the kinds of salaries which they deserve based on what they're doing, as well as how hard it is to make that kind of thing happen. Invest in a curriculum that's evaluated and changed and modified as it needs to be, that goes across the nation. What can you imagine? What would happen if every community that had a school district also had to set up their own defense department? It'd be bizarre, etc. We need to invest in quality, really put our effort into this kind of thing. We need to develop a respect for education. You and I grew up probably in settings where that existed. In neighborhoods that took care of kids, a block where if my mom was working, the next door lady might not be working, and we had oodles of mothers and fathers watching us and helping us as kids grow. And education was an important type of thing. Working hard in the elementary school, middle school, it was a hugely important kind of influence on our lives. And I think we need to try to recreate that kind of a thing so that, in fact, we create respect for education. And in my mind, it's also respect for liberal arts education. There's more to being a great teacher than knowing how to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic or manage behavior. There has to be some respect for the historical nature of things, for the arts, for music, for sensitivity to why we're motivated to make these things happen. And to me, that's a hugely important thing, and it's one of the strengths of UW Eau Claire, was the emphasis on liberal arts and the integration of professional training within that type of thing, where people learn to respect and love learning. And then they bring that to whatever they do, whether they're teachers or they're physicians or whatever. They go on to be lawyers or carpenters or construction people, etc. So I do think that, yes, but I think the investment has to be massive in order to turn around back to the notion of why so many people are incarcerated. I've seen wonderful programs in Milwaukee in early childhood education, but still those same neighborhoods, some of those you can't go out in at night. You're afraid. People are afraid. The people who live there that shouldn't have to put up with that kind of a thing. There's something awry that I think is an outcome of all of the things which I've talked about disappearing.